All right, class, this is going to be a short video to walk you through how to do a histogram using the data analysis Toolpak in Excel. Excel is a little bit tough to do a decent histogram. You'll want to recall that the histograms have bars that touch, and it should have quantitative values down on the horizontal axis. But it's just not the most user-friendly route, I guess I could say, just to get a histogram. So I thought I would walk you through it. Dr. Gates' video walks you through a different approach, and you just pick whichever one seems easier for you. So on your screen, I've just got a sample of, and actually let me add another one, so I've got 30 numbers. So I've got here 30 values of, actually, nope, take that out. I've got here 30 values of a sample, think of it like a sample of IQs. And I want to, with a histogram, we are interested in a quantitative variable, and we are interested in looking at a graph that will show where these values are clustered, what kind of spread they have, if there's any gaps and different things like that. And the histogram is the better choice when you tend to have a fairly large spread between your values and when you have a lot of different values. If you were just looking at number of children in a family, those values are anywhere from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and not too much higher than 7, 8, 9, 10. That would be, easy just to do individual values. But when we have messier values with a lot more spread, we would like to bin the data into groups. So in order to see what bins I should use, because technically with a histogram, you want more than about 5 bars, but fewer than 20 bars. In other words, if you do a histogram and have 40 bars, you really are not benefiting that much from doing a histogram. So in order to see where things are clustered and how they're spread, it's better to have anywhere between 5 bars, sometimes 5 to 15 bars. Some textbooks will say anywhere from 5 to 20 bars. So what I'm going to do first, in order to decide what bins I'm going to use, is I'm going to sort the data. And if you'll recall, to sort the data, I'm going to actually click and drag down my numbers. All right, click and drag. So you highlight all the values. Then I'm going up here where it says home, and I'm going to go over here where it says sort and filter. And I'm going to click on that and click sort smallest to largest. And notice it's sorted now. So what I want to notice is that my minimum is 80 and my maximum is 135. So if I think about groups, it would be a little bit too small to have groups or intervals or bins of width 5, because then I'm going to be going 80 to 85, 85 to 90, 90 to 95, and so forth, and that's going to be a lot. So I'm going to go ahead and stick to just skipping by tens. And so what happens is when I decide on my bins, typically the smallest, the minimum value, you would want that as at least a starting value in the bin. And I'm going to skip by tens, like I said. So I'm going 80, 90, 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, and I don't need any higher than that because my maximum value in my data set is 135. So that's it. Now, what I'm then going to do is go ahead, and you would have to have your data analysis Toolpak installed. Hopefully you've watched the video on how to get that installed. And if you've got it successfully installed, then you come up here to click on data, and you see I've got my data analysis Toolpak installed here. So I'm going to click on that, and you would scroll down. I've already got mine highlighted on histogram right here, and then click OK. And it's going to be blank right here and right here, but I'm going to want my input range to be these IQ numbers. So I'll click on those. My bin range, the one that I created myself, is this column. So once you've clicked in the bin range box, you then click and drag down your bin numbers. I'm not including labels, so I do not want to check the labels box. And then I've got chart output, okay? And I'm actually going to, if you leave the radio button clicked where it says new worksheet, it will put the histogram in a new worksheet. I want to go ahead and keep it in this same worksheet. So I'm going to actually click on output range, and just click in this box, and I'm just going to click my mouse on a cell right here so that it's going to start my graph right at cell F7. You can just click somewhere on this open part of the graph. Make sure chart output is clicked, and then I'm going to click OK. And there's my histogram, and it's got my frequencies within each bin. Now, what is confusing, though, and let me stretch this out by clicking my mouse in the box, grabbing one of these edges of the graph, and I'm going to stretch it out so it's easier to see. But here's some problems with the histogram that Excel creates. It doesn't have bars that touch, first of all, and technically a histogram needs bars that touch. And the bins along the horizontal axis are a little bit confusing because they look like individual values, but yet they're really not. They're supposed to be intervals. So to help that, I'm going to actually create my own interval labels, and I'll show you how to add those in. But one thing you have to be careful about is the 80, when you typed it in as a bin, that is actually the maximum value of the bin. All right. In other words, 80 really corresponds to that tick mark right there. So when I grouped them by tens, then the 80 is really this tick mark, the 90 is really this tick mark, and so forth. So like the second interval is really like an 81 to a 90. The first interval is really like a 71 to an 80. And the main reason for that is 80 is the top of that interval. You have to remember it's the upper value of that interval. And when you make the interval width, if you want it to include 10 values, you actually make it an interval that goes from one number to the next and is actually one less than that. So even though you're doing intervals of size 10, you make the actual numbers spread from 71 to 80, which is 9. It seems like it's 9 numbers, but it's really 10. All right. I mean, it's really creating intervals of width 10. So I'm just going to go back on all of these with 100 being this max, but I'm going to start it at 91. The main reason, y'all, that you can't go back and start it and go from 90 to 100 is you would be doubling up on the value of 90 in 2 different groups, and you don't want to do that. So 91 to 100, and then 101. So I just go up by 1, 101 to 110, so that you see these numbers in the bin column are the upper values, which is the way it should be. 111 to 120, 121 to 130, and 131 to 140, which we know should grab that last maximum value. So here's what I'm going to do then to make the graph, first of all, have bars that touch, and to show better looking intervals along the horizontal axis that are more lined up to the bars that they correspond with. All right, so first thing is I'm going to click my mouse in the graph, but I'm going to specifically take my mouse and click on any one of the bars. So I'm going to left click until the bars are highlighted with dots, and then I'm going to actually right click. And when I right click, this is what I want, because when I go down to Format Data Series and click on that, it should bring up gap width over here. And I want to move gap width all the way down to 0 so it will not put gaps between my bars. Notice my bars now touch. The other thing is I want there to be solid black lines between the bars so it won't just be hard to tell where one bar ends and the other bar starts. So I come up here to the looks like the paint bucket, come up here, click on that, click on the bucket. If you want the bars to be a different color, or to fill them with patterns and different things like that, then you can change the color. I'm going to change mine to a little bit lighter color here. So I go to the color, click on something a little bit lighter where it will be easy to see the divisions between the bars. And the border section is where you can change the lines to something darker and more solid. So I'm going to go down here to border, click on solid line, make sure the color I changed to is black so it's darker and you can see it. And I'm even going to change the width of the line to something a little bigger. I'm going to maybe put mine on 2. And then when I do that and just click my mouse somewhere on the spreadsheet, then you should notice now that it's a much nicer histogram and more appropriate, but I still don't have my intervals the way I want them to. So the way I do that is I come down here to these numbers along the horizontal axis, and I just left click on, or actually I just right click on those bars on the horizontal axis on those numbers, And when I right click on the numbers on the horizontal axis, I want to go to select data. So you right click on the horizontal axis numbers, select data, and then I come to where it says horizontal category axis labels. So I want to edit that to put something different. And when I edit, click edit, it asks for a range of axis label range. This is where I go up to my axis label ranges that I want and click and drag on those values so that it changes the sheet label that it corresponds with. Lift it up, click OK, and you see that it's got labels a little bit better. If you need to stretch them out so that they're not stacked up, then there you have it. And this is, a little bit better. In fact, the 71 to 80 has the one number that was 80, and the 131 to 140 has the frequency of 1, which corresponds to the number 135, and you can see how things match up. So the interval means any numbers 71 up to and including the 80. The second one, any numbers 81 up through and including the 90, and so forth. If you want to get rid of the frequency legend here, you can get rid of that to make it a little bit more spread out. You can click the word bin and instead put whatever it corresponds with. My variable name here is IQ, so I can change that. I can change the title pretty easily. I'm just going to click on the title and click IQs, press enter there, and actually I want it in caps, so IQs. And you can do lots of other fancier things if you want to. You certainly don't have to, but this is nice because it's bars that touch. You can clearly tell that most of the IQs are clustered around anywhere between 101 and 110, and that it's roughly symmetric shaped, and it ranges from as low as in the 70s or close to that to as high as around 140. So it's just a much more appropriate histogram, and I hope that you'll find that helpful because it is tough to figure it out on your own, but sometimes watching somebody do it makes it seem a little bit easier.